Dan Illman, Matt Bernier, race number 9 at the fairgrounds on Saturday is the $75,000 Tenacious Stakes. Let's take a look at this field. They are traveling 1 mile and 70 yards. And Matt, we're expecting a pretty heavy favorite in here in the number 7, Tenacious Stakes, who just looked so good winning his 2X at Churchill Downs with a 99 buyer, then an optional claimer at Saratoga with a 106 buyer. And our mouths were watering. We figured this horse was going to take the step up into graded stakes and maybe, just maybe, give Gun Runner a tussle in 2017. And instead, he went to the sidelines for over a year. The good news is he came back firing against only 2 others last time out.
This has just kind of been this horse's career in a nutshell. When it looks like he's ready to blossom and take over, he's gone for a long, long time. And that's exactly what we had happen there with that little run after Saratoga. You're right, he came back and he looked as good as ever, and that was at Churchill, going a 1-turn mile. This distance here in this race, clearly not going to be an issue for him. He is very obviously the horse to beat. He is going to be the favorite. He deserves to be the favorite. I'd imagine you're going to be in that 3-5, 4-5 range when it's all said and done. This to me is a really important race for a horse like this, though, because if he runs something close to what he has in each of these 3 races most recently, where he's combined to win by 18.5 lengths, I think there's a real scenario where you could be looking at a horse that could wheel back in a month in the Pegasus. That's if they can keep him healthy.
It's hard to get excited off a win against an off-the-turf field against only 2 other horses where he was able to make an easy lead. But I think that's the kind of race Al Stahl was looking for off the long layoff. Really no stress situation, able to press the pace, finish home, and prepare for the next one. Now, here might be a potential issue, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this as we throw up the Timeform US pace projector. When Tenacious Stakes has been successful in many of his races, he's been right up on the lead or sitting just off. Timeform US has him in 4th or 5th on the outside, chasing a fast pace. Do you think he can come from 3-4 lengths out of it and still win?
Well, I guess it's a little bit tough to say, simply because the only other time he's really had to do that, it was over a sloppy sealed track. It was off of a little bit of a layoff back at Churchill back in May of 17. So I don't know that I know for certain that he can or can't. I would just chalk it up and say, even if you think that's how it's going to play out, where the pace projector suggests from a speed figure standpoint, he is way the fastest horse in this race. And if he can't overcome it, he's clearly not as good as maybe I've thought or made him out to be. But look, if he shows up with his best race, he's probably just the best horse in the race.
The horse on the lead, or at least projected to be so by Timeform US, Pioneer Spirit, was actually favored over Tenacious Stakes in that race at Churchill Downs. And when Tenacious Stakes came calling at the 3/8 pole, there was no response for Pioneer Spirit. It's hard to imagine Pioneer Spirit turning the tables, especially if he faces pressure from the likes of the number 2, Colonel's Dark Temper, who is stretching out in distance. I think Colonel's Dark Temper is going to leave Pioneer Spirit a little bit more alone, but I still think the pace will be honest.
Yeah, I think they're going to be going early on. This is a fast horse. All of his wins have come in gate-to-wire fashion, for the most part anyway. And from that outside draw, I think Florent Geroux, you've got one way to go. You send him, you clear off. You worry about Colonel's Dark Temper when the race really picks up. But for the time being, at the very beginning, you got to get him out of there in good order and try to clear.
Speaking of Colonel's Dark Temper, he has done some nice things in his career. He won the West Virginia Derby last year at 3, and his most recent start was his first start off a long layoff. And to me, it just looked like a prep for this race. They cut him all the way back to 6 furlongs, which in my opinion is shorter than his best. And I thought he ran okay against some legitimately good older sprinters. I mean, Switzerland was in that field. Proforma's done some good things on turf. Wind Time has been in good form. All things considered, that might be a nice tightener for Colonel's Dark Temper as he stretches out to a more appropriate distance.
You know, my bigger concern with this horse is from a class standpoint, does he quite fit with these? I feel like he might just be a notch below, and I know it's probably a little bit too early to really throw out a statement like that, but I do wonder if he has to run into a horse like Tenacious Stakes, or he has to run into a horse like Snapper Sinclair or a Pioneer Spirit, is he quite of the same class as those horses? I think he's good, and I think in theory he could work out a really nice trip in here, but he's done his best generally when he's out there on the lead, and I'm not totally convinced that he's going to get it.
15-1 on the morning line for the defending champion in this race, and that's the number 6, Cooptado, who won the 2017 Tenacious, utilizing the similar turf to dirt move that he's going to be given on Saturday. And he won last year's Tenacious at 17-1, beating a very nice horse in Leofric. His recent turf form has not been good. The question is he the same horse? And Timeform US had him so far back he was even off the screen.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't love him coming into this, but in the grand scheme of things, if we're just looking at it from speed figure standpoint, it's not like he's coming into this in too much different form than he was last year. It's not like he was in raging form then. I know he had a couple of better finishes as far as placings are concerned, but the speed figures weren't all that strong anyway. I just, I think the other thing too that you have to factor in, that was before Leo Frick turned into what he has turned into, and at the time there was no Tom's d'etat in a race like that. I just think he probably deserves to be another big long shot here.
Thirst for Life was a very promising 2-year-old for Mark Casse, and it never really panned out. He dropped into the $50,000 claiming tag. Wes Hawley's done a very nice job with this horse. He got him to finish second in the mine shaft at the fairgrounds last year, got a couple of wins at Churchill Downs over the spring, but after the Cornhusker handicap, they ran him in that race at Parks on August the 25th, and he just didn't fire for one reason or another. Now, I know he was in against a strong field. Aztec Sense, of course, has won with a 101 Beyer speed figure coming out of that race. Small Bear came back to run second at Belmont with a 94 and is going to be one of the main factors in the Queens County Stakes on Saturday, but that last race was too bad to be true, and it was interesting that he put front wraps on that day.
Yeah, a little bit of a concern. Now you're going to have to deal with the layoff. We'll find out what we get there. I kind of look at this horse and say, look, on his best day, he could certainly be there. He really took his game to another level when they clipped him back in the summer of 2017. That was even back when Casse still had him in his barn. But considering how poorly he ran in that race at Parks, you brought up the front wraps off of this kind of layoff against this company. I think it might be a little tough.
Wes Hawley also likes to give him a race off this kind of layoff. We see from the formulator fact for Thirst for Life, past 5 years, older dirt routers off a 2 to 4 month layoff, 0 for 29. Let's move down to the rail. The number 1 West Fest removed blinkers last time out, stretched out in distance, and it resulted in a gate-to-wire score at Remington Park. It's nice to see that he can get this distance. It's nice to see that he can get a good spot saving ground from the rail, but that field he beat last time out, I'm not sure that was a really strong group.
Yeah, a little bit hungry, and also from a running style standpoint, I think he has to be out there on the lead. Now, breaking down to the inside, I know Timeform doesn't have him that close, but I think the one way for them to go is to send. It's the only way you can win this race. And I think that at least just ensures that there is even a more honest pace, because whether it's him or whether it's Colonel's Dark Temper or whether it's Pioneer Spirit, I think they're all wanting to be in the same or similar position, and I think it just helps horses coming from slightly off of it.
Maybe Nonetheless was campaigning on the wrong surface for most of his career. He was an okay turf horse, there was no doubt about it, stakes winner on the grass, but ever since being switched back to the dirt by this capable barn, he's come through with some really nice efforts. Last time out, beaten for a 62.5 tag, but the Beyers have been solid. He's got the mid-pack running style that would fit a race with a good amount of pace. I'm just not sure if this reformed claimer is the class to beat some of the bigger names.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the other interesting thing to me, you take a look, he's 2 for 2 on a wet track. That 95 Beyer here in 2 starts back, muddy sealed. You're not projected to see that on Saturday down in Louisiana. It's supposed to be sunny and pretty good weather. So I think he might be a little bit up against it from a class standpoint, but he's in great form coming into this.
Another horse that took advantage of a sealed, sloppy track last time out, right next door, the number 4 Fat Man, who was dangled for an $80,000 tag. There were no takers, and Fat Man was just able to press a rather moderate pace, kept right on going. You could argue that the runner-up, Rich Daddy, who came back to run a good second in the Claiming Crown Jewel with a 98 Beyer speed figure, if that horse had a little bit of pace, he would have made Fat Man work a little more.
Yeah, certainly. And I just kind of look at Fat Man as a whole, and you say, where is your really fast race on your paper? I understand he's got a victory at the fairgrounds, and again, he is coming in on the heels of a win over a sloppy sealed track. I just have never really thought too much of this horse. I think he's fine, he's respectable, but I think he's in probably too tough.
Let's take a look at our top selections for the Tenacious Stakes. I'm going to go with Tom's d'etat. I think he gets through this race. It's an important race, as you mentioned, but you're going with a horse that really blossomed at the fairgrounds last year, and that's Snapper Sinclair. He didn't win the Lecomte nor the Risen Star, but he ran so well in both of those races, and then something must have happened in the Louisiana Derby because he missed the majority of the season after that. I like how Steve Asmussen has given a nice slow progression since the layoff. A turf sprint, which for all intents and purposes I think was a prep for the last race, and that last race has come back live.
It certainly has. The winner that day, Lone Rock, he came back and won a stakes race last weekend at Remington with a 95 buyer. So at least you know the form has held up. I've long maintained, and I still maintain, that this horse is going to be better going shorter. I don't know if they're ever going to do that. I think he's a one-turn kind of horse, 7/8 of a mile, one-turn mile. But this mile 70, it should be within his scope. I think if he can't get this, certainly we've got distance problems. But maybe he's not a likely upsetter to a horse like Tom's d'Etat, but even if you're looking to play some sort of an exotic, to me, if you just wanted to key the heavy chalk on top and use this horse underneath, I think he fits in here well. I don't know if you're going to get the 8-1 morning line. Maybe he goes off in that 5-6-1 range, but if anyone's going to pull off sort of a shocker, I think it could be this horse.
But you have red-hot connections. Not only is the Asmussen barn firing at the fairgrounds, we saw him dominate the Sunday closing day stakes-laden card at Remington Park. I'm going Tom's d'Etat. I'm going 7-2-5. You're going Snapper Sinclair. I'm assuming it's 5-7 something.
5-7, 8-9, but 5-7 pretty much. That's the way I'd be looking at it.
Really intriguing race, especially for the morning line favorite. Tom's d'Etat, the $75,000 Tenacious Fairgrounds race number 9 on Saturday is an approximate post of 4:22 Central. Good luck.